There's an old story, and it's used in various cultures, where a group of blind men approach an elephant and try to describe him. The first man approaches the elephant, touches its side, and says, "It feels like a wall." The next man touches the tusk and says, "The elephant must be like a spear." Another blind man touches the trunk and says, "It feels like a snake." And that is quite often what happens with our descriptions of the Black Panther Party. We know the party we were in and not the entire thing. We were making history, and it wasn't nice and clean. It wasn't easy, it was complex.
From Chicago, Illinois, the mighty Charlotte.
For God's sake, give more power to the people. There's some people up there holding everything.
The thing that led to the Panthers was what we were seeing on television every day: attack dogs, fire hoses, bombings.
We stand on the eve of a black revolution, brothers.
Now we have the emergence of voices within the community that were saying we're not going to continue to turn the other cheek.
You tell them white folk in Mississippi that all the scared niggas are dead. We want black power. We want black power.
This was a revolutionary time. 50 countries in the world gained their independence in the decade before the founding of the Black Panther Party. This is the time when people are getting drafted to go and fight in Vietnam. So if somebody's coming and saying, well, if you're gonna fight, why not fight right here in LA or Oakland? You know, that made a lot of sense.
We couldn't be absent and see what we saw. We couldn't unsee it. I was a cocktail waitress in a white strip club 2 years before I joined the Black Panther Party. How did that happen? The rage was in the streets. It was everywhere.
We not gonna get nothing. Not by sitting around here doing these city demonstrations and nothing. People not gonna do anything.
Well, how are we gonna do it?
By violence. Violence. By uprising, having a revolution. Just put blood, you know, let everybody bleed a little bit.
For God's sake, why don't you give more power to
Relations between police and Negroes throughout the country are getting worse. One of the cities most troubled by animosity between police and Negroes is Oakland, California.
People always talked about freedom and what that means. During that time period, being black in America meant that you didn't walk down the street with the same sense of safety and the same sense of privilege as a white person.
There was absolutely no difference in the way the police treated us in Mississippi than they did in California. They may not have called you nigger every day, but they treated you the same way they did in Mississippi.
Police jump on you, beat you up, put the gun at your head. This is what we were going through on a daily basis.
When I first met Huey and Bobby, they were in the process of forming an organization for primarily self-defense. We didn't plan to have a nationwide organization or anything like that. We were organizing, dealing with the problems in Oakland.
We use the Black Panther as our symbol because of the nature of a panther. A panther doesn't strike anyone, but when he's assailed upon, that he'll back up first. But if the aggressor continues, then he'll strike out.
Huey had studied the law in Oakland at that particular time. Anyone could carry a firearm who did not have a felony conviction at the time. The firearm could not be concealed. It had to be in the open.
The California Penal Code Section 12020 through 12027, and also the Second Amendment of the Constitution guarantees the citizen a right to bear arms on public property.
Huey said, we're going to carry our guns and we're going to follow the police. And if they stop someone, we're going to stop. We're going to maintain a legal distance. And we're going to observe these so-called law officers in the performance of their duties.
We were in the car and driving around having fun. We would be looking at the pretty women and chasing the sisters. Then something might happen, and then all of a sudden, the focus would just become serious.
We're coming around the corner. Stay facing where you are.
We would stop. We would get out of the cars. We would walk up to the scene. Those who had rifles would carry them in the open, clearly visible.
We would stand at a distance where the police couldn't say they were interfering with their arrest or their detention of the individual, and make sure that there was no brutality.
We stood back with our weapons ready to throw down if necessary.
They would take the weapon and pass it across like this, and it would sweep right over the officer.
No one would do anything until a policeman ejected around in the chamber. Then we would all eject rounds in the chamber, and all up and down the street, you could hear this clackety clack, 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 clack.
And then when the traffic stop or the incident's over, they bring the weapon down across by you like this and get back in their car and drive off. It was pretty intimidating.
We refer to ourselves as the vanguard, and we were setting, by example, a new course that we wanted the entire community to follow.
No one wants to touch the legitimate hunter, but we've got to protect society from nuts with guns.
When bands of armed people with loaded weapons can move about our streets intimidating and frightening citizens, then I think we should act, and we intend to act. It's my intention to make it a misdemeanor to have loaded rifles and shotguns and weapons in public places.
The police department had went to a local congressman to get a bill written. So Huey called me up and says, we have to go to Sacramento. It was conceived as a media event that the press is always at the California State Capitol.
No one really wanted Huey himself to go because Huey was kind of a quick-tempered firebrand. Bobby was a little more cautious. And it was like, look, you know, you've been great so far, but, you know, you might blow it up there and, you know, bad things could happen. We caravanned to Sacramento. I think there were about 30 of us all together. And most of us had some weapon.
We was on the state capitol on the lawn, and Ronald Reagan, then the governor of the state of California, was there, about 10 feet away from us, holding a press conference with these young, like, parochial school kids. And what happened is, as soon as the press seen us, they gravitated from Ronald Reagan over to where the Panthers was.
The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense calls upon the American people in general and the black people in particular to take careful note of the racist California legislature, which is now considering legislation aimed at keeping the black people disarmed and powerless. At the very same time, racist police agencies throughout the country are intensifying the terror, brutality, murder, and repression of black people.
The State Assembly was in the midst of a heated debate when the young Negroes, armed with loaded rifles, shotguns, and pistols, marched into the Capitol.
When we got in the halls, you have to imagine there's 100 cameras, still cameras, print media people backing up, and I'm saying, where is the spectator section? And the press saying, this way, Bobby. Some party members got ahead of me with shotguns, pistol, and wound up on the actual floor of the California State Legislature.
They're heavily armed. Whether their weapons are loaded or not, nobody seems to know.
The armed group, who said they were members of the Black Panther Party, retreated to a service station several blocks from the Capitol.
I remember this one cop came by on a motorcycle, and he seen all these guns, and he got on the thing, and that's when they started to swoop down on us from everywhere.
You have no right to take my gun away from me. You don't know the Constitution, right?
Sure we do. We're well aware of the Constitution.
I would like to have a gun back.
Why do you believe the legislature is racist?
Because, you know, you're a part of it, and you're obviously, it's a white system.
The news got to everyone in the black community who had a television, everyone who had a radio. It was in every newspaper across the nation. It put us on center stage.
I don't think that loaded guns is the way to solve a problem that should be solved between people of goodwill. And anyone who would approve of this kind of demonstration must be out of their mind.
When I heard about Sacramento, I was like, damn, these brothers are bad. They're here up in Sacramento in the Capitol, packing.
The boldness, the courageousness about it, the arrogance of it, that put a whole new face on things. I said, man, I want to be a part of this, whatever that is.
Yeah, I walked into the office and told them I wanted to join the Black Panther Party, and they kind of laughed. I didn't know that there were any other women, in the party at that time. But then I asked them, could I have a gun?
I was a student at Lincoln University outside Philly when I first heard about the Black Panther Party. I found my friend John Huggins, and I said, we need to leave this stupid campus. We have work to do. We got in John Huggins' little hoopty car. We drove across the country from New York, and when we got to the West Coast, we joined the Black Panther Party.
What we want, what we believe.
Point number one, we want freedom.
We want decent housing.
We want an education for our people.
We want an immediate end to police brutality.
People join for all kinds of reasons, but the Panthers have a 10-point platform program that really was sort of like the fundamental sort of organizing tool and orientation tool.
The civil rights movement was basically a Southern movement. So when you had an organization like the Panthers, who were taking on things like housing and welfare and health, that was stuff that people in the North could relate to and rally behind.
Our attack was not only against white supremacy, but it was also about capitalism. We actually thought that the way in which capitalism created a working class that was kept absolutely destitute, that was wrong.
So we took the position that in order for us to be free, that system had to be dismantled. We cannot be free in a system that had oppressed us in the first place. So you have to get rid of that system.
We were not after the church folks. We were not after the Muslim folks. We wanted the brother on the corner. The brother who was getting his head banged in every weekend by the police. We wanted the brother who was going to jail, just snatched out of his car for a traffic ticket because he was black. That's who we were after.
We would get calls from Atlanta, Nashville, Raleigh, North Carolina, from Washington, D.C., Bridgeport, Connecticut. Every city, small or large you can think of, wanted a chapter of the Black Panther Party.
We would send members of the organization to help connect them to us, but it was destabilizing in the sense it was somewhat chaotic. the way the party was growing, and it was too fast and too big.
There was no screening process. There was no, why are you here? What do you expect to have happen while you're here? Where are you trying to accomplish? There was none of that. Members came from whoever just came in off the street. The downside, of course, was we had no idea who any of these people were. We didn't have time for a whole lot of, who are you, what are you doing? You want to do this? Fine, here, go.
This week on Firing Line, my guest is Mr. Eldridge Cleaver, the information minister of the Black Panthers.
Eldridge Cleaver comes out with this book, Soul on Ice, a series of his essays from prison. And the New York Times says that it's brilliant. It gets onto the bestseller list. So when Eldridge joined the Panthers had gotten themselves a star, a literary star.
I've been called by the National Review the Goebbels of the Black Panther Party. And all of this is an attempt to undermine the party or to give it a bad presentation to the public.
Huey Newton always had this vision. He was the visionary of the party. Bobby Seale, he had the personality. Eldridge Cleaver was the person who made the party credible to Black intellectuals, to the white left intellectuals. You know, all of them loved Eldridge Cleaver. They understood what he was talking about, or at least they thought they did.
Eldridge had this incredible ability to encapsulate a thought in a few sentences and form it into an artistic statement that pointed right, that stabbed right into the heart of the enemy, and he did that all of the time. Now, was he always correct? No.
And I say that Ronald Reagan is a punk, a sissy, and a coward, and I challenge him to a duel. I challenge him. I challenge him to a duel to the death or until he says, Uncle Eldridge.
Was he insane? Fuck yeah. That boy was crazy. And he got a lot of people hurt.
And I give him his choice of weapons. He could use a gun, a knife, a baseball bat, or a marshmallow, and I'll beat him to death with the marshmallow. That's how I feel about him, see?
I said, they are not going to be able to control Eldridge. Eldridge was a Rockweiler, uncontrollable personality. Who could be in an organization with Eldridge and he not be the leader? Nobody. And that's basically how it ended up.
A pool of blood marks the spot where 23-year-old Officer John Fry was found fatally wounded from 4 gunshots. The shooting happened at 5 a.m., approximately where I'm standing on 7th Street in the heart of Oakland's Negro ghetto. The suspect, charged with murder and attempted murder, is Huey Newton, 25-year-old leader of the Black Panthers for self-defense. Newton is hospitalized in serious condition and under heavy guard.
We went up to Highland Hospital and it looked like every police in America was there. We didn't know for sure if Huey was dead or alive. We didn't sleep that night. Nobody slept that night, I don't think.
As he was handcuffed to a gurney going into surgery, he was arrested for murder and expected to face execution.
A lot of the other Panthers were in jail because of the protest that they'd done in Sacramento. So Eldridge was the only available spokesperson for the Black Panther Party.
The Black Panther Party demands that Huey P. Newton be set free. And we wish to make it very clear that if he is not set free, there is little hope of avoiding open armed war in the streets of California from sweeping across this nation.
We said, well, Huey's in jail, he's facing the death penalty, what can we do? I think the initial slogan was Huey must be set free. Eventually, it got shortened to Free Huey. It became a huge
Free Huey Newton rallies across the nation.
You did not have to be a member of the Black Panther Party. All you had to be was a human being. People of all kinds took up that cry, Free Huey.
Examiner made a report back here, the last Sunday's paper, that we were anti-white, that we hold no bones, this is a quote, pick no bones about being anti-white. This is a bold-faced lie. We don't hate nobody because of their color. We hate oppression. We hate murder of black people in our communities.
The people just turned out. They wanted to help us. They wanted to give us money. They wanted us to come speak. There was this gathering of connection to the Black Panthers that was different to before.
We got to free Huey! Get with me! We got to free Huey! Got to free Huey! Get with me! Get it! Got to free Huey! Everybody, out! Got to free Huey! Out! Got to free Huey! Out!
We were a phenomenon. The way that we walked and talked and dressed. We had swag.
It was a rhythm. It was a rhythm to how we spoke. It was a rhythm to how we walked. And the people recognized that we stood out. Outside of that, on the street, ooh, that's a butt ugly person. Ooh, they ugly. But in the party, it was just something that gave them this tremendous sex appeal.
The Panthers didn't invent the idea of black is beautiful. People had started wearing afros and dashikis. But one of the things that Panthers did was that urban black is beautiful. And that look just blew people away.
If you were a young black man living in the city anywhere, you wanted to be like this. You wanted to dress like this, you wanted to act like this, you wanted to talk like this, you wanted to be this.
It's a standard of aggressiveness, of militance, of just forcefulness, that the sort of standard we haven't had in the past.
But figuratively speaking, you're not about to become a Panther.
No, not today or tomorrow at any rate. Maybe the day after.
Am I black enough for you? Am I black enough for you? Am I black enough for you? Am I black enough for you?
This brother here, myself, all of us were born with our hair like this, and we just wear it like this. Reason for it, you might say, is like a new awareness among black people that their own natural appearance, physical appearance, is beautiful. Black people are aware now. They're proud of it. It's pleasing to them. Dig it? Isn't it beautiful? All right.
I got to stay black enough for you. I gotta stay black enough for you. We're gonna move on up, we ain't never gonna suffer no more. I got to stay black enough for you.
You're talking about people who are teenagers, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's the bulk of the Panthers are teenagers. So the fact that we were so young and the fact that this hadn't happened before, I'm not certain that we recognize how startling it looked to other people.
Dear Mr. Newton, I'm a 13-year-old black girl and I want to be a Black Panther. I wish you would fill me in. Does it matter what your religion is? What are some qualifications to be a Black Panther? P.S. Write me back personally.
I was taught to be proper. Behave yourself, you're going out in public, to always know that the white man was listening. With the Black Panthers coming to the scene, it was just a completely different message. As a 12-year-old, you know what? You had this whole other portrayal of self and just digging it.
For photographers took advantage. I mean, they took our pictures, they put them on newspapers, they put them on magazines, and that look that we projected, you know, the big afro, the leather jacket, the shades, that became a hit. And obviously, photographers were drawn to the Panthers.
Well, we hear a great deal about the Black Panthers.
The Black Panthers. The Black Panthers were absolutely unique.
The Black Panthers. The Black Panthers. Black Panthers. Black Panther Party. Black Panther Movement.
Black Panther Party.
Black Panthers.
I think the Black Panthers really understood the media. They knew what we were after. They knew what we were focusing on.
The Panthers has amounted to
The Black Panther Party.
Many people know of the Panthers.
You might say that we exploited the Black Panthers, but I think there's a lot of evidence that they used us to their advantage. They were able to establish their legitimacy as a voice of protest.
The chairman of the Black Panther Party, and here he is.
We have a film of your breakfast program. Is this without sound also?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Sure,
Would you comment on this?
Yes, I will. This is a free breakfast for children program, and they're preparing the food there early in the morning. It's about 2 hours work in the morning. These party members primarily set this whole program up, and then we involve as many of the community people as we can.
Who I want to see? Keep it in there. Come on in, little brother. Come on in, little sister. Y'all can sit down and get something to eat.
Studies came out saying that children that didn't have a good breakfast in the morning were less attentive at school and less inclined to do well and suffered from fatigue. I mean, there was all sorts of scientific reasons to have a good breakfast in the morning. And we just simply took that information and a program was developed serving breakfast to children.
After my father came home from Vietnam and was discharged from the Army and couldn't get work, we were going through a very hard time. Food was kind of, just the everyday necessities were hard. I was embarrassed to go, but when you went, kids are all laughing, and then all of a sudden the stigma, or whatever you thought was a stigma, went away, and you really got to see that, yes, this is what the Black Panthers are.
We were showing love for our people. If you have a child, if you know that, hey, these men and women are gonna feed my child in the morning, that's a big deal.
The breakfast program actually really caught on. It served about 20,000 meals a week to young people in 19 different communities. So it wasn't a fly-by-night thing. It really actually was making a difference.
Just at the moment that the Panthers are turning towards survival programs, towards free breakfast programs, free clinics, and free food programs that will help them reconnect with the Black community and build their membership, and repudiating this earlier advocacy of armed self-defense and police patrols, J. Edgar Hoover attacks the Panthers.
Hoover saw any form of Black organizing as a threat to the status quo as he saw it. Change that would have involved equality, that would have put power in Black people's hands, was very much a threat to Hoover. He started something called COINTELPRO, directed against what he called Black nationalist hate groups.
COINTELPRO was the abbreviation of Counterintelligence Program.
The purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of Black nationalists.
Neutralize could mean making somebody an informant, or putting somebody in jail, or having somebody killed. Hoover was sending letters to various offices almost on a weekly basis to come up with new ideas to go after members of the Black Panther Party.
"245 of the 290 COINTELPRO actions were against the Black Panthers. One of the mandates was, do not make this program public. Do not tell anybody that it exists.
FBI has a memo that states the objectives of counterintelligence operations. One is to prevent the rise of what they call the Black Messiah, a single charismatic leader that could unify the movement. They wanted to prevent the appeal of radical political movement to Black youth.
And they wanted to isolate these groups to prevent them from gaining respectability in the Black community.
And they were very explicit in stating these goals.
We were followed every day. We were harassed. Our phones were tapped. Our families were harassed. My parents were both visited by the FBI.
We must create suspicion with respect to their respective spouses, and your imagination and resourcefulness must be employed in order for the Bureau to be successful.
They would send letters to my wife, and the letters would say that Landon is sleeping with this woman, or sleeping with that woman, or sleeping with the other woman. Then when I got arrested, the FBI came to me and said, look, we got all this evidence, all these people are gonna flip and turn on you, we're gonna execute you. Because we got you now, we're gonna execute you. But if you will be an informant for us, then we'll let you go.
My recruitment by the FBI was very efficient, very simple, really. I'd stolen a car and went joyriding over the state limit. And they had a potential case against me, and I was looking for an opportunity to work it off. And a couple of months later, that opportunity came when FBI agent Roy Mitchell asked me to go down to the local office of the Black Panther Party and try to gain membership.
The FBI wanted to destroy the Panthers. They absolutely saw the Panthers as the vanguard of a very, very threatening and violent revolutionary movement. They absolutely wanted this organization to be destroyed.
The FBI was coming around, my mother-in-law and my wife, and for me to stop that kind of activity, I stopped going home. And a lot of other people did also to protect their families. You could kind of, in a sense, say we abandoned our families for the Panther Party.
You might have a 3-bedroom apartment that might have 10 Panthers staying there, sharing bedrooms. The living room was basically also a bedroom.
We called them Panther pads. Somebody would be on 24-hour security. Somebody was responsible for cleaning the place. Often there was a rotating list of responsibilities. It was a sense of community that we created.
The rank and file was the everyday members that did the daily work of the party. They're the ones that made the party. The backbreakers, the ones you put all the work on.
Panthers realized we have to live together to protect one another. And we have to also be committed to this thing, to this cause, to this movement, 24 hours a day.
The rank and file, whatever orders that came down from our captains and lieutenants, we did that because that spirit was in us to stay in this movement till our death, or if it meant going to jail. So whatever they told us to do, we did it.
I was in labor cooking breakfast for the breakfast program.
So I was between contractions, flipping pancakes.
I would spend all the day answering the phones. Even after I had my son, when I came back to work, I used to have to jump him up and down really heavy because it just wouldn't stop crying as I'm answering the phone.
You name it. I cleaned freezers with a toothpick.
And that's how I'd answer the phone. Black Panther Party National Headquarters, Black Panther Party Central Headquarters, can I help you?
Dear Huey, when I joined the party, I was thrilled about becoming part of an organization that believes in the equality of men and women. It bothers me that there are brothers who still view women as sexual objects. We should have no men in the Black Panther Party who feel this way, or women for that matter.
One of the ironies of the Black Panther Party is that the image is the black male with the jacket and the gun, but the reality is the majority of the rank and file by the end of the 60s are women.
Everybody knows that all the people don't have liberties, all the people don't have freedom, all the people don't have justice, and all the people don't have power, so that means none of us do.
The Black Panther Party certainly had a chauvinist tone, and so we tried to change some of the clear gender roles so that women had guns and men cooked breakfast for children. Did we overcome it? Of course we didn't. As I like to say, we didn't get these brothers from revolutionary heaven.
The paper was the lifeblood of the party. That's how we survived. We sold the papers, 25 cents back then. It cost maybe 12 cents to print it. The other 12.5 cents went to the various chapters and branches. That's how we basically survived.
The party paper went places party members would never get to go to, and reaching people we would never see. But the paper got there some kind of way or other. So it was very important to get the paper out.
Los Angeles, 2,850. New Haven, 3,000.
When we were loading boxes or bundling papers or whatever we were doing, we did it in an assembly line fashion. And we would just start singing, you know, ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough to keep me from getting this paper to you, or whatever we would do. We would change the lyric just a little bit, you know, it's your thing, do what you want to do. Why they can't tell me what and then we'd, you know, what to do.
In the paper, everything came together. You had the platform, the 10-point platform was in there. You know, it's the first thing you see when you open up the paper.
We want to end to the robbery by the white man of our black community. That's what we're talking about, like number 3. Number 4, we want decent housing, fit for shelter, human beings. You dig? And then we want education.
It explained who we were and what we were about, what our goals were.
Tell me, ma'am, do you read the Black Panther Party newspaper?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Because I am black and I'm proud.
What do you like best about the paper?
Because they are proud people and I love them.
Black is you, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is me, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is us, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is free, black is me, black is us, black is free.
For me, there was only one reason to read the Panther newspaper, and that was to see Emery's illustrations. His paintings, his caricatures, his illustrations literally gave us the story.
Black is you, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is me, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is us, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is free.
The community would respond to the artwork because it was a reflection of them in the artwork itself. Because you're putting them on the stage as the characters and the heroes in the images. They could see their brother or they could see their uncle in the images.
Black is me, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is us, black is me, black is us, black is free. Black is you, black is me, black is us.
Through the breakfast programs, through the other programs that we had, health clinics, people come in and talk about how they can't pay their bills or they need child care. That teardrop symbolized that pain that I observed. Even through that pain, there was this strength and determination
and conviction to still battle on. So we're trying to put that into the artwork itself.
Emory was our social realism. He gave you a sense of bravery, resilience, courage, and most of all, beauty. That was what I loved about Emory.
It was Huey and Bobby's ideal to draw a pig, drawing that would symbolize the police. So the first pig I did was one on the 4 hoofs. It just came to me one night while I was standing up on 2 hoofs. Put a bandolier, gun bandolier on it with the holster and the badge and the flies around it, and that became the symbol, icon of the pig. It took on a life of its own.
That rhetoric didn't bother us when it was spoken by the Panthers. But when it was picked up by college students, them saying it, that definitely bothered us.
I was a sergeant patrolling in the projects, and there was a cutest little girl. So I stopped to say hello, and I said, "Hi, honey, how are you doing today?" And she looked at me and she said, "Fuck you, pig." And I thought, we have lost it, man. We have flat lost it.
Anybody that criticized the police, especially that didn't have fear of saying it publicly, made the police angry. It was us against them. That became the theme.
We have seen the pigs on the scene. We know what he's like. We know what he's capable of. Just being a damn pig, oinking and beating and walking the street.
The police must be brought under control by any means necessary, including through force of arms. These racist Gestapo pigs have to stop brutalizing our community, or we're going to take up guns, we're going to drive them out.
That tendency to keep escalating the rhetoric, that was a major part of the growth of the party, but it was also a destructive force because you were always up in the ante.
I say guns, pick up the guns, pick up the guns and put the pigs on the ground. Pick up the guns one more time, guns.
It brought all the repression down on them before they were prepared to handle it.
I just want to deal with blacks and black liberation. My scene is picking up my damn gun, and I'm a mother. Have my baby in one hand, my gun in the other, and then I'm here, motherfucker, to get what's mine.
The voice that called for justice and brotherhood has been stilled. Men of all races now must join together in this hour to deny violence its victory and to fulfill the vision of brotherhood.
The effect of the death of Martin Luther King and the Panthers is overwhelming in the sense that once King was assassinated, and the way he was assassinated so publicly, it shattered many, many people.
They'd killed their last chance for me to be peaceful with them. They'd killed their last chance for negotiation. They killed a man who walked through hell to try to get along with you. And you killed him? That was our champion. You killed whatever hope I had in you, and I have no more use for you. None.
I believe that there was a decision made that some response on the part of the Black Panther Party has to be made to what happened to King.
Eldridge Cleaver was worried that if the Panthers didn't take decisive action, they would cease to be the vanguard. So he had this idea of actually actively attacking the police. He goes and he approaches members of the party in Oakland, and all of the older people refused to participate. They knew that this would be suicide. But the youngest member of the party, little Bobby Hutton, decides to follow Eldridge into battle.
Little Bobby called me, "Big man, I need a weapon." I gave him a Winchester 12-gauge pump shotgun that I had. And I told him, well, be careful out there, you know, watch yourself. And he said, okay, I will. And he left. And then first thing in the morning, I have the radio on.
The Oakland police stated that they were fired upon during a routine investigation of a suspicious person, and after a short search, cornered Hutton and Eldridge Cleaver in the basement of a nearby house.
A tear gas canister blew up, and the basement they were hiding in caught on fire. They decided they didn't want to burn to death. They would rather surrender. Eldridge told Bobby Hutton to take off all your clothes so they can't say you're concealing a weapon. When you surrender, take off everything. But Bobby was embarrassed, and he just took off his shirt, and he kept on his pants.
Bobby Hutton came out with his hands in the air. First member who walked out of the house and was gunned down.
My heart sank. He's only 17 years old. He was one of the first people to get killed in the party, and so young. In essence, I felt they went out and got my little brother killed. What if I had not given him the weapon? Those are some of the demons that were in my closet.
Shot down like a common animal, he died a warrior for Black liberation. In the name of brotherhood and survival, remember Bobby.
That could have been my son lying there. And I'm going to do as much as I can. I'm going to start right now to inform white people of what they don't know.
For the Black Panther Party, it was crisis and chaos, because this was the first time that this had ever happened. There had been no Panther murdered by police.
We want nonviolence, just like Martin Luther King. But nonviolence on the part of who? To sit and watch ourselves to be slaughtered like our brother? We must defend ourselves, as Malcolm X said, by any means necessary.
After the loss of Bobby Hutton, Eldridge was ordered to surrender to San Francisco police to go back to prison. But on November 28, 1968, he didn't turn himself in, and he was not to be found.
Mrs. Cleaver, do you know where your husband is?
No.
When was the last time you saw him?
Sunday night.
It's rumored that Eldridge is out of the country. Do you think this is possible?
No, I don't think so.
And so the mystery remains. Where is Eldridge Cleaver? It's entirely possible that his wife and lawyer really do not know. To the law, he is simply a fugitive from justice.
He had gone to Algeria. There's nothing the United States government can do to us in Algeria. They don't have diplomatic relations with Algeria. We could function openly, politically, in Algeria, so we opened our international section of the Black Panther Party.
The Black Panthers were welcomed by all sorts of liberation movements. The North Vietnamese who were moving into a newer embassy gave their old embassy to the Panthers. And the Black Panthers, of course, loved being accepted like this.
In Eldridge Cleaver's successful attempt to establish an international wing, he's able to do some things that are very important. Malcolm X and other black nationalists had talked about forging those types of alliances. The Panthers actually did it.
Nous souhaitons de nouvelles victoires dans votre lutte. Et nous espérons de vous recevoir à Saigon libéré.
And we hope to receive you in liberated Saigon.
Tell me, I hope to receive them in Washington, D.C.
At that time, America was being demonized considerably because of the war in Vietnam. So here we are, black Americans who are opposed to all of this. We're the counter to the United States. We were able to connect with North Koreans, with Vietnamese, with the Chinese, and with also many African liberation movements, and many people came to see us there.
We came over here to do what we can to communicate to you what's happening in our struggle in the United States.
I think a lot of what draws these groups together is a kind of anti-American sentiment. If you want to really shake the American establishment, you want them to think that they are in danger, that a revolutionary new world is on its way. The Panthers are certainly the people you're going to support.
Since the United States of America is the backbone of oppression in the world, the blows that we strike against the empire there will also aid the liberation struggles in Africa, Asia, and Latin America as we aid ourselves.
Face the Nation, a spontaneous and unrehearsed news interview with the Chief of Staff of the Black Panther Party, David Hilliard.
Your Minister of Information is now in exile, Eldridge Cleaver. You speak with him often on the phone, is that correct?
Well, you know I do. They tap the phones. The phone is probably hooked up to the White House.
The leadership of the party, its national leadership, sits with David Hilliard. Bobby Seale is in and out of prison. Huey Newton is in jail at this point for a number of years, and Eldridge Cleaver is in Algeria.
David was someone who was considered a, you could say he was a sound storekeeper. He kept the shop in order.
Richard Nixon is the chief spokesman of the American people, and if the man is not responsible for the people in government, like the FBI agencies or the local police, then he should stand up and let the American people know that he do not endorse the kind of campaigns that's been waged against black and other colored people in the world.
Nixon is elected with a sense of a mandate to crack down, and he feels that it is his personal charge after the '68 election to repress.
This is a nation of laws, and as Abraham Lincoln has said, no one is above the law, no one is below the law, and we're going to enforce the law, and Americans should remember that if we're going to have law and order.
The Nixon administration gives J. Edgar Hoover even more of a sense that he can repress without restriction.
Do you feel the nation is in trouble?
I think very definitely it is.
Well, what is the answer?
The answer is vigorous law enforcement.
That's the only answer?
That's the only answer.
How about justice? You hear a lot about justice with law enforcement.
Justice is merely incidental to law and order.
FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover today asserted that the Black Panthers represent the greatest internal threat to the nation. Hoover said the Panthers have perpetrated numerous assaults on police and have engaged in violent confrontations throughout the country.
When Hoover identified the Black Panther Party as the #1 threat to the national security of the United States at a time when they're fighting in Vietnam, of course that was crazy, but it was politically very effective. And it says to law enforcement at the local level, we can take the gloves off now. We don't have to respect the civil liberties, and we can go after them with everything we got.
One of the executive orders of the Panther Party was that we was to defend ourselves from unwanted attacks, to not allow the police to just forcibly come in.
If tear gas is thrown, here's your water and your mask. Keep this on you all the time.
Nobody's coming in the front door. Nobody. No gas. Nobody getting on the roof, Gerald. I want you to do that. But I just wish they would come tonight. Yeah, well, I wanted to God, I wish they would.
The Panthers were a criminal organization, were violent, and they wanted to kill cops. That's all I needed to know.
About 40 policemen arrived on the scene and began surrounding the Black Panther headquarters.
They were trying to change government as we know it to terrorist activity. We took a very proactive stance in combating what we considered a terrorist organization.
I think the FBI manipulated the police. The FBI arranged for the Black Panthers to get guns through informants. They would convince the police that the Panthers had weapons. They had to go in and be ready to be shot at, so the police went in and shot at them first.
You hear about raids taking place against Black Panther officers. They were coming to kill us.
Police say there was sniper fire throughout the early morning hours, so they moved in cautiously and then began shooting.
The Black Panther police shootout lasted 30 minutes.
It was obvious that the government had made a decision that this was all-out attack on the Black Panther Party. Every significant office is going to be raided, it's going to be bombed, it's going to be shot, there are going to be mass arrests.
In the pre-dawn hours in Chicago today, police and Negroes fought a...
Police and Black Panthers clash in Houston, New Orleans, and other cities.
For the Black Panther Party, it was a crisis situation because we didn't have the resources to handle all these arrests and all these trials.
In other cities, the Panthers were under physical attack from police departments. But New York City was going to handle its Panther problem differently. They created a conspiracy case that allowed them to arrest the entire leadership of the New York City Black Panther Party.
A New York grand jury has indicted 21 alleged Black Panthers on charges of plotting several bombings in the city tomorrow.
On April 2nd, 1969, in pre-dawn raids, 21 Black Panthers were charged with all kinds of terrorist activity.
These are some of the men the police are accusing of being involved in the plot which could have wounded or killed scores of busy New Yorkers. 12 men were arrested today, 2 are already in jail, and 7 more are still at large.
And so the Panther 21 started.
I had just turned 16 years old, but I had already become a section leader. When they first kicked in the door of my grandmother's house at 4 o'clock in the morning, I thought, wow, I'm important enough to be arrested. I'm a real Panther now. There was a feeling that it was a badge of honor.
This group, 21 people, was the leadership of the New York area, all tied up in court with $100,000 bails, which none of them could make.
We were facing 360 plus years in prison. And I began to feel and accept the fact that I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison.
The Black Panther Party is riddled with informers who are intent on creating situations in order to bring forth such indictments in an attempt to destroy the Black Panthers. Are you saying that they try to frame them? No question about it.
I mean, I told the jury that maybe the police started the party.
People who come back to New York are going to work full-time until the Panther 21 and the people accused are allowed to get a fair trial.
We spent a lot of time building awareness and doing fundraisers. And then we had to have high-profile fundraisers because this kind of money that we needed couldn't come from the Black community. We would wind up doing fundraisers at places like Jane Fonda's townhouse so that we could raise money for the Legal Defense Fund. After a 13-month trial where New York State spent millions of dollars and put dozens of witnesses and hundreds of pieces of evidence, a jury deliberated for 3 hours.
The jury have considered all the counts and charges against the defendants and have found them
not guilty.
There were 156 not guilty verdicts. It was astonishing. Courtroom erupted. The city erupted. There were people dancing in the streets as word spread.
Even as the New York 21 are being acquitted, you're seeing smaller trials, other trials pop up really all over the country. Some of them result in acquittals, some of them result in convictions, but this really consumes most of the party's energy.
People were afraid to join. They knew that it was infiltrated. They knew that they would be watched immediately. They were afraid of being prosecuted unjustly. Nobody wants to go near such an organization that's so hot.
I was part of planning a demonstration against Vietnam at the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago. Bobby Seale was invited to speak.
The revolution in this country that's occurring is in fact people coming forth demand freedom.
He then left and didn't have anything to do with the demonstrations or riots or confrontations in Chicago, but he was arrested on the advice of the FBI, and he was later indicted for that speech.
Bobby Seale asked to postpone the trial till his lawyer, Charles Gary, could come to Chicago. The judge refused, and then Bobby said, well, I'll represent myself.
It started when Seale demanded to cross-examine a prosecution witness, accusing the judge of denying his constitutional rights to defend himself. The judge ordered him to sit down and be quiet, but the fiery Black Panther leader continued to cry out.
The judge told the marshals to hold him down, and that started several days of insanity.
He kept insisting on his right to represent himself, and a judge's response to that was to order the bailiffs to put gaffer tape over his mouth and tie him to his chair. I mean, it couldn't have been more definitive if they had put a sign on him saying slave. You know?
But it turned out Bobby could make noise and say things through the gag.
Stop this medieval torture that's going on in this courtroom. This man wants to defend himself. Stop the trial! 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 Stop the trial!
One of the most amazing phenomena of that time was outside the federal court building, there was a plaza. It was right in the heart of town, but right in the middle of the loop. And these kids were coming down from the courtroom, and they, with fire in their eyes, having just seen that madness up there. And all of a sudden, one day, this black orator, who at that time was 20 years old, starts talking to these people, and all of a sudden, it's like a magnet.
The Deputy Chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, Bret Hampton. I just want to tell you that the chairman of the Black Panther Party is going to be ungagged, and they're going to have to take those chains off him. Bobby Seale is going through all types of physical and mental torture. But that's all right, because we said even before this happened, and we're going to say it after this, and after I'm locked up, and after everybody's locked up, that you can jail revolutionaries, but you can't jail a revolution. Right. You might run a liberator like Aaron Cleave out the country, but you can't run liberation out the country. You might murder a freedom fighter like Bobby Hutton, but you can't murder freedom fighting.
Whatever it was, Fred had it. When he got up in front of a group of people, the words just flowed. You were awash in the words, okay? It was like that. And I don't care how many people were there, it's like he was talking to you. That's a dangerous person.
So we're going to see about Bobby.
He wasn't above us, he was one of us.
I'm the deputy chairman of the state of Illinois Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton.
By the time he was 17, he was the head of the NAACP youth branch. He was already experienced by the time the Illinois chapter of the Panther Party was formed. So he was a natural choice to lead it.
We say all power to all people.
Fred spoke in the People's Church in August of 1969, and I was in the crowd. Toward the end of his speech, he said, everybody stand up, and we did. And he says, now raise your right hand.
Say that, I am a revolutionary.
And I couldn't say it because I thought to myself, I'm a lawyer for the movement. I'm not a revolutionary. And then he said it again, I am a revolutionary. And by the third or fourth time, I was saying a revolutionary as loud as anybody else in the room.
We say white power to white people. White power. Brown power to brown people. Brown. Yellow power to yellow people. Yellow power. Black power to black people. Black power. We say Panther power to the Vanguard Party.
A lot of us thought that we were on the eve of a revolutionary situation here in the United States. We used to call the Panther Party the vanguard of the movement because they were out in the forefront. They were kind of setting the pathway. The things that we would face some repression for, they would face it 10 times as great. They were sacrificing oftentimes their lives in the struggle.
And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm black, and I hate white people. I'm white, and I hate black people. I'm Latin American, and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly, and I hate Indians. So we fighting amongst each other.
Fred Hampton here in Chicago was the main voice for racial unity.
Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best. We think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight with solidarity.
We worked with organizations such as the Young Lords, a Puerto Rican street gang that had become political, and the Young Patriots, hillbillies, Appalachian white boys.
I want to introduce a man who come over tonight from another part of town, but he's fighting for some of the same causes we're fighting for.
Bob Lee, who was our deputy field marshal, had a meeting with them, and he was explaining why we should work together.
That police brutality up here, there's rats and roaches. There's poverty up there. That's the first thing that we can unite on. That's the common thing we have, man. But I want you people to stick together, and I'll stick with Black Panther, and they'll stick with me, and I know they will.
The coalition that Fred was building in Chicago represented the Latinos, the poor whites, and poor blacks, but also because he had been in the NAACP, he had linkages with folks who were in the congregations, or church folks, and with working class folks. So Fred was building a broad-based coalition in Chicago, and that was the threat.
J. Edgar Hoover most feared young whites uniting with the black struggle. And he was most afraid of what he called a black messiah rising up out of this movement.
Fred Hampton was very good at running an organization. He could delegate responsibility, he could spot talent. The one thing that he failed to spot, however, was the FBI plant, who was, of course, his personal bodyguard.
I routinely supplied whatever floor plans or diagrams
I could to the FBI. That started in June 1969. I mean, they had a floor plan and keys to the Black Panther headquarters.
December 3rd, 1969, there was a rally at the People's Church on the west side of Chicago. And it was one of those rallies where Fred gave one of those speeches.
I don't believe I'm gonna die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm gonna die from splitting on a piece of ice. I don't believe I'm gonna die because I got a bad heart. Why don't you live for the people? Why don't you struggle for the people? Why don't you die for the people?
Close to 12 midnight, William O'Neill came and picked me up and brought me back to our apartment. Chairman Fred had been running 24/7 trying to organize, so he fell asleep. I was 8.5 months pregnant with our son, so I fell asleep too.
Police attached to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office raided a Chicago apartment shared by two high-ranking members of the Black Panther Party before dawn today. The police were acting on a tip that a supply of weapons was in the apartment.
The state's attorney recreated the layout of the Panther apartment and made arrangements for them to produce his version of what happened.
He stands up. I stepped over and I put the foot out. Short burst. We realized that there are still some people remaining. And before I could get past the threshold, there were 3 shots fired from the rear bedroom.
The immediate, violent, criminal reaction of the occupants in shooting at announced police officers emphasizes the extreme viciousness of the Black Panther Party. So does their refusal to cease firing at the police officers when urged to do so several times.
When the 15-minute gun battle was over, 2 Black Panthers were dead. Police and Panthers differ about what happened.
In the apartment, we received no warning, no tear gas, nothing to offer us to surrender or come out.
Bullets start coming through the walls, plaster flying.
Saw bullets coming from, it looked like the front of the apartment, from the kitchen area. They were, pigs were just shooting.
I laid on top of Chairman Fred, and I could feel even through him the mattress vibrating.
You could feel the bullets going into it. I just knew we'd be dead, everybody in there.
We told them we were wounded, and they said, "Come out with your hands up."
One of them grabbed my robe, and they swung it open and said, "Oh, what do you know? We got a broad here." And then another one grabbed my hair and slung me into the kitchen area. I heard a voice say, "He's barely alive. He'll barely make it."
They started shooting again. I heard the sister scream. They stopped shooting. Pig said, "He's good and dead now."
The police made what must be a historic type of blunder in leaving the apartment open. So right away, people went in there.
I stepped into the living room, and there was blood, Fred's blood, pouring from all the way from the bedroom in the very back of the house out from the kitchen into the living room.
It was like a slaughterhouse, and there was blood all over the place. When we lifted the mattress up to look underneath, 3 .45 caliber machine gun slugs fell out of the mattress. Only one shot came from a Panther weapon because Mark Clark, the young kid who answered the door, was shot in the heart as he answered the door, and the gun dropped and went off through the ceiling.
All of the splinters were coming into the apartment. So we said, this was a shoot-in. It wasn't a shootout.
And this was planned? This was a plan to get Fred Hampton?
all indications to me, personally, that this was obviously a political assassination.
I don't think anybody would have expected the police to commit just murder. It takes a certain kind of guy to carry that out. They lied about what happened that night. Much of what they said happened couldn't have happened the way they said it happened.
I do not intend to quibble about that account.
You intend to get at the truth?
The account that we gave of the events is the truth.
It was a death squad that did this raid. It was a police death squad. And the whole thing was set up by the FBI.
The funeral of the slain Panther leader was marked by angry eulogies, including one from Ralph Abernathy, head of the Nonviolent Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
Enjoy your peace, Freddie, because there will be no peace in this land until freedom comes to all. We are going to trample these streets with our feet.
Last message that I think that Fred would have wanted everybody to hear, and that is, I am a revolutionary. I am
We didn't know when it was going to happen, but we felt there was something about to happen. We were filling up sandbags, fortifying the headquarters, putting sand in the walls, putting sandbags around the entrance to the office.
We were actually trying to build a tunnel to the sewer line. If the police attacked us, we were going to escape into the sewers. You know, we were going to sit charges on the building and blow the building after we left.
It seemed like it was more police presence around. We were getting stopped more. We were getting harassed more.
I think they found out that it was a different climate for them here. We'd stop them, we'd search them, we'd shake them down, and I think we did establish that we were the dominating force.
The Special Weapons and Tactics concept was formed in 1966. The original SWAT team in the United States, or anywhere for that matter, was the LAPD SWAT team. And in this particular case, this was the first time the SWAT team was activated to serve a high-risk warrant.
It was decided that a no-knock warrant would be utilized and surprise would be the element that you would use.
I'm on watch on the roof. It's a real quiet night. Everything is just still, you don't hear anything. The access to that roof on the other side, pow, it breaks open. By the time I'm swinging around, I'm seeing the lights on me. They had a big light, and I'm hearing the whole, freeze, freeze, still, drop it.
And the front door blew open. Boom! Well, Cotton had went in the gun room. He had a Thompson submachine gun. Put it down with that Thompson.
And it sprays across the roof. You can see it in the light from the street. And I was seeing it was like, at the time, man, I'm gonna tell you, that instance, it was the best music I ever heard.
And then all of a sudden, my gun just went off. I don't know what happened. The gun just went off, you know, so we had them in flank and front. And then Paul Red got down, he got busy, and we drove him out the front door.
3 officers were down, and the gunfight continued as the officers were drug out of the way by other officers.
Peaches and Tommy were 2 sisters that were there. They went into the communication room. pictures, you know, start calling the news media and calling national headquarters and calling everybody they can call.
5 minutes after 10, about 4.5 hours after the original raid this morning.
We had riflemen across the street, on the roofs across the street. They were shooting into the shooting ports of the building that the Panthers had created. Panthers, on the other hand, were shooting back out.
Tommy had come downstairs, and she was laying behind me like in a T.
You could see a sunbeam went across her legs like that. Like, you know, you need to move. And she, you know, she just kept talking and shit. Next thing you hear a shot go off.
Bullet went through both her legs like that. So, you know, at this time, you know, we had pretty much got shot out.
You know, we were saving enough bullets that when they came in the door that we would have some bullets to shoot back with, you know. I mean, it wasn't like it took no brain scientist to figure out, well, this shit is over with.
We were talking about giving up, and you know, all the brothers say, well, man, I ain't going out there, man. I'm not giving up.
And for like 30 minutes, it just went around, oh, I'm not going out first. And like, I'm not going out first. We would die in this motherfucker. I'm not going out first.
Peaches said, I'll go out there. And I said, Peaches, she said, no, I'll go.
The white flag coming out the door. The woman, she's holding her hands up.
And she went outside, and Peaches gave up. And when they didn't shoot Peaches, then we came out one at a time. That's how that went. It was a big, glorious shootout, but after they raided us, they had all the players locked up. All the main players was in jail.
For about 3 years, the Black Panthers have used Huey Newton's name for a rallying cry, demanding that he be freed from jail where he is held on a charge of killing a policeman. The words "Free Huey Newton" have been chalked and spray painted on 1,000 fences and walls. This spring, the California Supreme Court found some errors in his trial and ordered a new trial.
It was extremely tense. You could feel the energy and the tension in the air.
The Panthers had been getting ready for guerrilla warfare, and they said, the sky's the limit if the jury convicted him.
Shouting, "We want Huey now," the crowd got their wish. At this hour, Huey Newton is a free man.
Everybody was just jubilant that day. Finally, he gets to walk out of that jail a free man. The sky was the limit, and the sky turned blue.
The image that was mobilized to create the Free Huey movement gave Huey almost mythic status in the party. He had become an image and not a man, and that gave him power that ultimately proved dangerous.
Come to the clinic tomorrow for an appointment.
He came out focusing on returning to the survival program, the breakfast program, the free health clinics, free food program, and the sickle cell anemia research program. I remember Huey P. Newton saying, the Black Panther Party was not going to last. He said the organization was going to get destroyed. Based on the way we were very aggressive, and we kind of realized that this wasn't going to last long.
We know those are not revolutionary programs. They're at best survival programs. We know that the people are in jeopardy of genocide, and that if they do not survive, then it won't be possible to bring about revolution.
We were really trying to connect more with the people in the community, and this was a big push, and there was probably some people who were not happy.
We have a Breakfast for Children program, you know, but that's not what the Black Panther Party is all about, you see. I don't agree with saying that the Black Panther Party supports Breakfast for Children, and that's all that we're about, you know. Don't talk about this other thing. The Black Panther Party is for overthrowing the United States government.
Eldridge Cleaver, who, while sitting comfortably in Algeria, was assailing the Black Panther Party as being weak, and it didn't have any more muscle, and it was a reform organization, a Breakfast for Children club, and he denounced the party, and he denounced the chief administrator of the party at that time, who was David Hilliard. He wanted to have even more bloodshed, which was not endearing us to the community.
There are also problems with the Panther 21 case. There were legal fees, and there became questions about how much of the money that was raised for the Panther 21 was actually getting back to defend the Panther 21. We wrote an open letter really criticizing national leadership in UEP Newton. And responsive national leadership, and in particular UEP Newton, was to kick out the Panther 21. They were expelled from the Panther Party. Eldridge came to the defense of the Panther 21.
The Black Panther Party has split into two factions, namely the Cleaver and Newton supporters. This dissension offers an exceptional opportunity to aggravate and possibly neutralize through counterintelligence.
The FBI was picking at Huey and picking at Eldridge, and I don't know who else they were picking at to create this sense of distrust.
In the future, submit counterintelligence proposals against the Cleaver faction in the Black Panther Party designed to widen the existing rift, effectively driving a wedge between Newton and Eldridge Cleaver. Ensure this mailing cannot be traced to the Bureau.
What we thought the FBI wanted to do was kill us, blow up our offices, shoot us. I don't think we understood exactly how insidious their project was.
They created a culture of paranoia, which was incredibly destructive. In this sense, it was the ultimate intelligence success, being able to pit the party against itself.
And the Panthers' internal conflict would soon erupt in the mainstream media.
Good morning. Yes, it's AM, all right. And this is Jim Dunbar with Nancy Ann Fleming and Gary Bentley.
We had become aware of some sort of a rift that had come to pass between Huey and Eldridge. We booked Huey and arranged a call from Eldridge in Algeria to take advantage of that.
We've got lots of things coming up here on AM this morning. Lots of things that you'll like to see, and we're looking forward to them too, right here on AM.
I'll not try to sugarcoat this. We thought this is a wonderful opportunity to build audience, so we decided to go ahead and put the two of them together.
We're about out of time. Do you have anything you want to say to any of your followers here in the Bay Area?
Well, I just want to comment on the expulsion of the New York 21, because it looks to us as though, as a result of the actions taken by David Hilliard over a long period of time, the party has fallen apart at the seams.
Okay, fine. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Go to the people.
Huey's goal in having Eldridge on the show was to show people that he and Eldridge were on the same page, and Eldridge sabotaged that. So Huey was livid. He was embarrassed, he was furious, and so within 10 minutes or so, he called back.
Mr. Cleaver? Yes? Just hold on.
Eldridge.
Hey, what's happening?
Yeah, you got the bombshell this morning. Well, very embarrassing for me. So I'm warning you now, or notifying you, that the intercommunal section, you hear?
Yeah?
The intercommunal section is expelled.
That's not the best way to deal with that.
Well, this is the way I'm going to deal with it.
Well, then I think you're a madman too, brother.
But I'm not a coward like you, brother, because you run off to get little Bobby Hutton killed. But I stay here and face the gas, you see? So you're a coward and you're a punk. You understand?
I think you've lost your ability to reason, brother.
Hey, brother, you heard what I call you. That's what I feel about you now. You're a punk.
It was a split in the party, and within days we began to feel just how bad it was.
Someone has to be disciplined. And my recommendation is to discipline Eldridge Cleaver, not for the criticism itself, but the way in which it was presented.
The word got back to us that Eldridge had put out the edict that the streets were not supposed to be safe for Panthers. Whether he said that or not, he was in Algeria, we were here, who knows? It was chaos.
There were certain chapters that stayed with Huey. Many of the people who followed Eldridge leave the party and go underground. And then some people just were confused and frustrated and walked away. They don't know which faction of the Black Panther Party to follow or if they should deal with Panthers at all.
The party had leaders who at that point were not worthy of the dedication of their followers. And I think that that was probably the worst aspect of the party, is that I think some of the followers felt betrayed by their leaders.
And the split becomes so deep that it erupts, in some cases, into violence, into fights and into shootings between Panthers.
This is exactly what the Bureau, in fact, wanted to see happen in the first place. This was part of what the COINTELPRO operations were really all about. J. Edgar Hoover, in particular, says we've been pitting people against each other. That's all worked out really well, but you know, now we don't even have to worry about it anymore. Now they're just going to keep it going on their own, and we can step back a little bit and just let them play it out. In the midst of all of this turmoil, the Panthers decide to go in a really radically new direction.
Bobby Seale, the Black Panther leader, has been in trouble with the law for many years. He's been in prison on some charges, acquitted on others, and now he's trying to make a new career for himself. He wants to be mayor of Oakland, California, where the Black Panther movement began.
All right. Nice meeting you. Okay, nice meeting you. All right. How y'all doing?
The Panthers decide to call members to Oakland in an effort to run Bobby Seale for mayor of Oakland and Elaine Brown for city council.
John Seale, member of the Central Committee of the Black Panther Party, called me at the Baltimore chapter office and told me to begin closing down all of our programs. So we were instructed to cease and desist all party operations, and to bring as many party members from Baltimore out to Oakland as possible.
Ultimately, they roll the die. They assume that if they're successful in this campaign, this might help to transform one American city. This might be the blueprint for the future. But they do roll the die.
The numbers were dwindling, and therefore the force of the party was dwindling. So it only made sense to consolidate everything and to say, what can we do with what we have?
We laid down the guns 2 years ago. We don't need guns, we said, because we knew we had the ability to really organize and educate the people and show them really some of the concrete things we can do in the community.
Initially, the idea of Bobby running for mayor seemed ridiculous.
Black Panther leader Bobby Seale ran second in his race for mayor of Oakland, California. But Seale polled just enough votes to force a runoff with the conservative incumbent, John Redding.
I think we were shocked when he ended up in a runoff. But as we got into the campaign, and as he started doing his campaign runs, as Elaine started doing her campaign speeches, as people started we started galvanizing people's enthusiasm, it started looking like he might win.
Express yourself. Express yourself.
Part of the strategy for the campaign was to increase the number of black voters on the rolls in Oakland. We sent people out into the community, going door to door, walking the streets, registering people to vote en masse.
And we went to the churches, and we went to the dope houses, and we went to the streets, and we went everywhere where the people were, trying to organize people to vote for Bobby and Elaine.
They run an amazing campaign. Bobby Seale used to ride buses in Oakland and do stump speaking on the bus. And they really took it to the streets in a different way.
Bobby had made a promise that he was going to give away 10,000 bags of groceries with a chicken in every bag. That was a takeoff on FDR's A Chicken in Every Pot.
We counted up and found out last night it was 6,882 bags we actually gave away last night. And I think that the voter registration is running neck and neck with it. I'm sure of that because a lot of, it blew our minds so many black people in the black community is unregistered to vote.
It was amazing because they were able to register between 20 and 50,000 people to vote. They basically turned their survival programs into a get out the vote apparatus.
But in the end, it wasn't enough.
Mayor John Redding of Oakland, California, was reelected yesterday in a runoff against Bobby Seale, the Black Panther leader. Don Oliver has that story.
Looking at the mood at Bobby Seale's headquarters, you would have thought he won.
You know what somebody told me?
What it is?
They say we don't care how the election goes. Bobby Seale, as far as you're concerned, they told me this, it blew my mind. You still our mayor, and we're going to keep moving. Power to the people.
Plan A was for Bobby to win, Elaine to win, and our slate to win. There wasn't, as far as I can remember, a plan B. Once we lost the campaign, there was kind of a, there was a void.
It was, in theory, a great idea that you could marshal this army of organizers to come to Oakland, but for the most part, when all the chapters come back to Oakland, the Panthers as a national phenomena really cease.
After the elections in Oakland, Huey Newton is known to have some erratic behavior. People who were very close to him would say that depends on the day you meet him. Some days, Huey Newton could be a brilliant, thoughtful political strategist and committed to the liberation of black people, and another day, he could be self-serving and thuggish.
I was one of the folks who oriented New Panther members, and I oriented them by telling them about what a wonderful person Huey was, and about how he was the leader of our party, never knowing what the hell he was. We had created the cult of the personality around a fucking maniac. He surrounded himself with former prisoners, and they became his inner retinue.
Around 1973, we created a special unit that would protect our leaders and do other kinds of activities related to what Huey Newton called the sterner stuff of politics. We're going to take over the underworld, the underground apparatus of the city of Oakland. We were shaking down the drug dealers, pimps. Some people were like stick-up men. It was bringing in revenue.
As he became more and more addicted to multiple substances, I don't think he wanted to live, and I don't think he wanted the party to live anymore. From there on, he was less and less the Huey I knew, and more listening to his demons.
If Huey wanted to see you, or you wanted to see Huey, you had to come to his penthouse, which meant that you went up in his elevator, which meant that you were searched before you got up there. And when you got up there, then you were confronted by this maniac in his penthouse who did all kinds of things to people. Physical assault, sexual assault, pistol whipping, threatening to kill.
He also became very abusive to the people around him. He abused people like Bobby.
There were changes in the organization. Bobby Seale left. There were a lot of people who had been in the organization from the beginning, and they left.
Then there was a time when he was violent with me. And that was why I left the Black Panther Party. I said goodbye as I left, but I left.
The great strength of the Black Panther Party was its ideals and its youthful vigor and enthusiasm. The great weakness of the party was its ideals and its youthful vigor and its enthusiasm. That sometimes can be very dangerous, especially when you're up against the United States government.
Just like city at the stagger on the coastline, living in a nation that just can't take much more. Like the forest they buried beneath the highway, I never had a chance to grow.
If there's anything I can do that would truly progress the people, let me know. I may not be a member of the Black Panther Party, but I will always be a Black Panther. All power to the people, peace and freedom to the world.
We made mistakes. We charged ahead too fast and were too arrogant sometimes. We certainly underestimated the police and the government in terms of the response to the Black Panther Party. But I think what remains true, the central guiding principle was an undying love for the people.
And now it's winter. It feel like winter in America. Yes, a time when all of the healer brothers who could help us done been killed. They put them in jails. Yeah, people know it's something wrong. Everybody ought to know winter.
The Black Panther Party platform and program. What we want, what we believe.
We want decent housing, fit for the shelter of human beings.
Well, nobody knows what to say.
We want education for our people.
Truth is there
We want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of Black people.
We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice.
Nobody fighting because, well, nobody knows what to say. Feel like winter in America. The truth is there ain't nobody fighting because, well, nobody knows what to say. Truth is there ain't nobody fighting because, well, nobody knows what to do. Truth is there ain't nobody fighting because nobody knows what to say.